They're going to be starting with a piece called Flashpoint.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for being here, and maybe more importantly, thank you for supporting your children and sending them here and letting them go through this experience. It's always interesting. Well, first of all, doing a concert in shorts and a t-shirt is nice, but just being in a non-formal, non-contest kind of setting and being able to work with the kids and have fun and experiment and not worry about doing this perfect or that, it's just refreshing and it's nice. And so I always enjoy being able to do this over the summer and make this stuff happen. This next piece is a piece of music that I was a little shocked about. It's called This Is Halloween. It's written by a gentleman named Danny Elfman. You would recognize this probably more from the movie A Nightmare Before Christmas. What's interesting is I realize that I'm old, and that movie in my time seemed very common. But then I realized it was like 20-something years ago. But half of these students have seen this movie and are huge fans of this. So I felt a little bit better, even though I have all this gray hair, that I'm not that past what is happening with him. So this is Danny Elfman. This is Halloween from A Nightmare Before Christmas. back here, they have to go through and change everything. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the next piece. It's by a gentleman, his name is Gerard Hall. He's kind of a trendy composer, if you will, right now. But this piece is called Biofeedback. And this is weird and interesting. He wrote this piece, or got the ideas for this piece when he was in the hospital. And he was hooked up to all these machines and all this different stuff. And he was a composer, so he started to think like, what would a piece of music sound like when I'm in the hospital doing all this thing, whatever. There's a synthesizer back here that I keep joking with him. It sounds to me just like Stranger Things. But it's the theme song that you'll hear that come through and a bunch of different stuff. It's just an interesting, kind of different piece of music. This is Gerard Hall's Biofeedback.
Along with rehearsing in the full band setting like this, about half of their day was spent in sectional rooms working on band music, and about half of that time was spent working on ensemble music. And earlier today, every section on stage got to perform some ensembles that they've been working on for the whole group. We've chosen a handful of them to perform for you tonight. The first one we're going to hear is going to be our percussion ensemble, all the way in the back. It's going to be conducted by Mr. Drew Talley.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mr. Talley. I'm one of the percussion directors at Flowermount High School. Today, the percussion ensemble will be playing Portrait of a Kid by Philip Michael Mintz.
Our second group to perform is the saxophone ensemble under the direction of Mr. Zach Lancer.
One, two, three, four.
third group to play for you tonight is back in the fourth row, but they are raising their stands and standing up. This is going to be the trombone ensemble under the direction of Mr. Richard Stevens. You get bonus points if you can tell us the name of the song. And our final group, our final ensemble to play for you is going to be our flute ensemble, which is taught by Mrs. Tamaki Ueno this week. They might be playing a song that you could also recognize.
we're going to experiment a little bit in this tune. This is a piece based off a Swahili folk song. And the students had the opportunity to volunteer if they wanted to improv, which means they're going to stand up. One of them's going to stand on a chair, actually, but they're going to stand up and they're going to make up some stuff as they play and try to figure this whole thing out. So this has been a huge experiment, and they've been great. They've been very willing to take chances and put themselves out there. So here's Swahili folk song. All right, again, I just want to reiterate, thank you so much for sending your students and letting them spend the week with us. We've had a great time. They're great people, wonderful musicians. We have one more tune for you today. It's a pop tune, Uptown Funk.
That's interesting. Thank you.